The sound was captured during an overnight investigation. What mattered wasn't what we thought it was, but what the evidence showed us. This investigation took place at the Beck House, an historic property located in Penetanguishene, Ontario, where Ellie and I were conducting an overnight session. Specifically inside Suite 301, where we had set up our equipment for the night and were monitoring the space. What you're about to see and hear was captured during that session, and it was unusual enough that we felt it warranted closer examination. What you're about to see is the REM pod activation exactly as it occurred without any enhancement or interpretation. This was unusual compared to how this particular REM pod normally behaves, and that's what caught our attention. While there are other REM pod brands that function in similar ways, they can differ slightly in their visual and audible cadences. What you just saw wasn't consistent with what we typically observe from this device under normal conditions. When we encounter an unusual sound, one of the first questions we ask is whether it shows any internal structure or whether it's simply random noise. A spectrogram allows us to visualize the sound over time. It doesn't tell us what a sound means, but it can show us whether patterns exist. If a sound is random, we expect to see irregular spacing and no consistent rhythm. If a sound is structured, we expect to see repeating bursts with comparable timing. In the first section of this recording, we observed a series of short pulses separated by gaps. What stood out was not just the presence of the pulses, but the consistency of the timing between them. Later in the same recording, we identified a second segment that displayed very similar behavior. Once again, the pulses and the spacing between them closely resembled what we had seen earlier. Because this pattern appeared more than once, we can describe the audio as structured and repeatable rather than random. The distinction doesn't explain the source of the sound, but it does tell us that something consistent was occurring. Identifying structure does not automatically mean the sound represents communication, and it does not confirm a paranormal origin. What it does tell us is that the sound differs from incidental or environmental noise or momentary interference. In other words, we could reasonably rule out the background noise of fans or heating and air conditioning systems. We could also rule out the likelihood of malfunction with the REM pod itself. Once we confirmed that the audio followed a repeatable timing pattern, the next logical question was whether that structure could be examined in a different way. At that point, the investigation moved from sound into structure. Using CyberChef, we explored whether the timing patterns could be represented as data, testing various encoding approaches, including a 7-bit application. Some of those outputs produced partial alphanumeric and symbolic characters, results that were suggestive but not definitive. Importantly, those results did not provide a clear or interpretable message, and they did not point conclusively to any known encoding system. They also did not allow us to confidently identify a conventional source. At this stage of the investigation, we've applied multiple analytical approaches, visual, temporal, and data-based, and we followed the evidence as far as it reasonably allows. The audio remains unexplained. What we can say is that the sound was structured, repeatable, and unusual, and that it resists simple explanation. Whether its origin is technological, something like AI communication, or something not yet understood at this time, the origin and its intent for this strange audio recording remains unknown. This investigation is ongoing, and we'll continue to examine the evidence carefully, objectively, and transparently. Thanks for taking the time to look at the evidence with us.